Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by thesoberclub.com. I'm Janey Grace. This is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. I'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there'll be inspiration from experts, quit-lit authors, and sober heroes. Hi and welcome to the podcast. I want to say a really big thank you to those people who sent me messages before my TEDx talk last week. Really appreciated it. And a couple of sober club members who came down to watch me. It went really, really well. It's a thing though, honestly, doing a TEDx thing. It's as I said last week, even though I've been doing public speaking for years, it's a real thing. And as you can probably tell from my voice, almost immediately after the talk I came down with a cold, so I'd obviously been lowering my own immunity or something, kind of getting stressed out about it. Anyways, it went really well, and it'll be online to view within a few weeks. It's hard to know. It'll be on the TEDx site. They usually pop it on YouTube. It's called Could Curiosity Be Your Superpower? And of course, the spoiler alert is yes, when it comes to behaviour change or ditching the booze, yes, it absolutely can. So I really hope you enjoy that when it finally comes out. When it does come out, I would so appreciate it if you would give it a like or a comment or whatever you can do on YouTube. Makes a really big difference to it being kind of spread around and getting the message out there. So thank you in advance. Really excited about my guest this week. And we're going to be talking about how the brain works. I mean, there's nothing more fascinating, really, is there? And particularly for those of us who are, focused on behaviour change and focused on living our best life. We really want to know how our brain supports us with that. So really looking forward to sharing this interview with you with Gill McKay, who is also one of my trained sober coaches. So it's been great to work with Gill. She's been able to bring some new insights to our coaching team as well around some of this stuff, around the whole neuroscience piece. Before we do that, though, I wanted to share news about a fantastic new drinks brand. I mean, you know that I'm really passionate about the phrase, keep the ritual, change the ingredients. I think I use it quite a lot. And I really do think it's the key. It's absolutely the key for people who are just getting started in this. And it's coming up to Christmas and people are having nice drinks and they're having parties and having people round for drinks, etc., etc. And it simply doesn't work if you're, picking up a warm orange juice or a cup of tea. So we need great drinks. And this is such a fantastic brand that I've come across. Lovely bottles. It looks really classy. And they're called Talonmore Drinks, and they're a Scottish-based family-run business. I think they founded in 2020, so they haven't been going very long. But, I mean, what a great name. So the name, they tell me, Talonmore, derives from the strength of an eagle and its touch point with the brand's natural ingredients. So the mascot of the eagle's head symbolises power and freedom. Isn't that fabulous? Just a great name for an alcohol-free drink. And it's quite unique. They use brewing methods of manufacture, so they don't distill the drinks, they're brewed. And this is this unique kind of beverage that it's a little bit like drinking a dark spirit, but clearly without the alcohol. So it's 0% ABV, I should say, and brewed with Scottish water, no less. And some of the ingredients in it are just lovely, like proper superfood ingredients like ginger and prickly pear, hawthorn berry, Assam tea, all these kind of ingredients that have recognised health benefits. And the taste is a kind of full-bodied, fiery kind of taste. So you know how people often say, now I'm not drinking alcohol, I just really miss that kind of kick that that I used to get with alcohol, and I can't get that with alcohol-free drinks. Well, you absolutely can with this. It really replicates that sort of slight kick that we get with alcohol. And then you've got the spicy taste of ginger and cinnamon. So you've got all these really lovely health-giving ingredients in this fabulous alcohol-free drink. And you can have it neat or you can have it on the rocks. or you can mix it into a mocktail. You know, it makes a really nice non-alcoholic cocktail. And then, of course, you could just have it as a, you know, with artisan tonics. There's lots of different ways to have it. As I say, lovely bottle as well. Such a lovely brand. Talonmoredrinks.com is the website. And on our website, we have a competition to win a bottle worth £22.95. You can win a bottle of the non-alcoholic spirit. So check that out. I'll pop it on the Sober Club as well. It's on imperfectlynatural.com. And if you go to the show notes for this podcast, I'll give you the link, obviously, to their website and to how you can enter to win some too. So enjoy. I mean, honestly, there's no excuse. I still have clients who sometimes say to me, I don't like alcohol-free drinks, really. Oh, what do you mean you don't like alcohol-free drinks? You can only mean the one you tried you didn't like, right? There's just so much variety, and this is just a great addition to your drinks cupboard, Talonmore Drinks, so check it out. So, just before I get into the interview, because here I'm really snuffly, I do apologise. Just a reminder that we have a few events coming up, so just want to mention them in case you are in the UK. I know we've got a lot of listeners who are not, but for those of you who are in the UK, we have a Family Constellations Day on Sunday the 6th of November. It's a magical experience. It's really quite life-changing. Hard to describe, but drop me a message if you're interested and I'll point you to a bit more information and we can have a chat, see if it's right for you. It's just a one-day workshop from about 9:30 till about 4. Be quite a small group, and it's very powerful. Whatever it is, you know, it's not linked to sobriety, but it's absolutely linked to well-being. It really is. So it doesn't matter what stage you're at, but it's just a fantastic way of recognising that we don't have to stay stuck. We're going to be talking more about this, of course, with Gill. So November the 6th, Family Constellations, it's myself and trauma expert Ralph Nowen who are leading it. And then the following weekend, if we get enough people, we're going ahead with our Champneys retreat. It's at Henlow, which I've been saying is Hertfordshire, and actually it's kind of on the edge of Bedfordshire. So that's Henlow, Champneys. Again, if you just look at thesoberclub.com, go to events, you'll find the info there for our self-care and sobriety retreat weekend. It's really jam-packed with resources, and it's great fun weekend, so maybe you can join us for that. And then if you want to do something online with us, maybe if you're somewhere else in the world or you can't make our events, then my next online group program starts on November the 9th. Well, we'll kick off our private WhatsApp group on the 1st of November. And then the live sessions start on November the 9th. It's called Tapping into Self-Care, Sustainable Secrets of Sobriety. And this is for you if you are, you kind of perhaps over the initial decision over whether or not it's a good idea to drink. Maybe you're kind of committed to being alcohol free, or maybe you've been alcohol free for years. What we're talking about, what we're focusing on this course is how do we live our best lives? How do we step into that authenticity? How do we make sure that we've really embraced this new sober identity? How do we know that we can look after ourselves and self-soothe when the stuff hits us? Because, you know, let's face it, just because you stop drinking doesn't mean that real life doesn't kick in. Sometimes it does. So we're going to look at ways to manage anxiety and stress in our lives and just focus on our passion, our purpose, and the best self-care. And the reason it's called Tapping Into is because one of the techniques we're going to base it on is emotional freedom technique. Most of you are aware of it, where we tap on certain meridian points. So we'll be using that along with other practices and modalities over our 3 live sessions. So if that's of interest, again, just go to thesoberclub.com, click on events, and you'll find the sign up page for that course, Tapping into Self-Care in Sobriety, which is an online group coaching program. So how does the brain work? Gill McKay, it's so lovely to chat to you. And I don't even know if I'm going to have long enough for this, quite honestly, because you've just got, I mean, your book is so fantastic and you've just got so much experience and knowledge in an area that I'm so fascinated by. I mean, who isn't fascinated by the topic of the brain? Anyways, let's start. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about my favorite subject. I'm absolutely a neuro nerd.
Yeah, I love it. Well, look, let's go back to base. Tell us a little bit about how you became interested in this topic of the brain, and then we'll get into some of the other sort of niches that you've gone into, and yeah, some of the topics in the book. Just take us back in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was one of these very lucky people who I landed in a job that I absolutely loved, and through a sort of like after a bit of an initial hiccup in the corporate world, I ended up in learning and development. So I've been in this wonderful world of training and coaching for way over 30 years now. We won't say the exact number. And I came to neuroscience in the 90s, where I was running a leadership program in Europe. It was the leadership school for the corporate university. It sounds very posh. My opposite number in the States, this is literally how simple it was. His uncle was a neuroscientist. So we were delivering this program globally within the company we were working for. And the guy in the States and I were starting to chat about how can we weave in this stuff around the brain, really in an effort to engage our learners. So to
Mm,
engage the people in the company that we were talking to about leadership. How could we make our training more exciting? How could we make it more sexy? How can we make it more engaging and get them to gain more from it? And quite literally, that was the introduction. So we did lots of experimentation and exploration, initially with Uncle Bill, the neuroscientist. But I just got hooked really early on. And the timing was right in the 90s when neuroscience had kind of really moved beyond just the clinical. So
mm,
all the experimentation was for dealing with neurodegenerative diseases, etc. But I think it was the technology, the increase in the functionality of scanning techniques, etc., that had made it more accessible to psychologists and
yeah.
to people like me in the learning environment to be able to apply the output of experiments in the labs, not just to the clinical setting, but to the learning and to the psychology and I guess the general human behavior setting.
Yeah.
So that's quite literally how I got started. And I described myself at the beginning of this as being a neuro nerd. I became a bit of a geek.
Well, I'm not
In those
surprised
years.
because it
Yeah,
it is fascinating. So the book is called, we should just stress again, the book is called
yeah.
Stuck: Brain
Thank
Smart
you.
Insights for Coaches. I think it's quite interesting when I realized that it's only relatively recently that we've come across the whole concept of neuroplasticity. I think for so
Yes.
many years everyone just thought, right, that's it, that's what you got a brain, it
Yeah,
does this amount of
yeah,
work and that's it.
yeah,
But of course we
yeah.
don't feel that way now we know that there's expansion and possibility.
Absolutely. And how liberating is that? So
Yeah,
I wrote the book
completely.
for coaches, my audience, if you like, are for coaches to help them to realize that when they work with clients, that if they're able to really project that message and get their clients to get the fact that, hey, change is possible, no
Mm,
matter how stuck I am. It's not just possible through willpower and really white knuckling it to make a change and change a habit, but actually at a physiological level, I'm changing my brain.
yeah,
And if you think
absolutely.
about that, and it's well proven. I mean, clearly it's more than just saying I'm changing my brain, but there's all sorts of stuff going on. How empowering is that for a
Mm,
client to actually
mm,
realize that it's not just about the cognitive thinking process, but they are actually making physical changes in their body and in their brain, and they can help themselves through all sorts of different types of actions to become more healthy in that change
mm,
physiologically. So it's
yeah.
really empowering for people, and it's really helpful for coaches to help their clients get into that state.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go right back to basics then. There'll be people listening who are thinking, well, what do you mean that there's expansion possible? Or, well, what do you mean? So can you, I mean, I'm sure there won't be anybody who already knows about the brain and will be upset hearing this again. So can you just take us through the real basics? I know in the book you give us a helicopter view of the brain. Can you give us a kind of potted
Oh my
version of
goodness
that?
me.
Just a kind of a
Yes.
reminder of the main
Yeah.
bits and what they do.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. The more I talk about the brain, and by the way, I'm not a neuroscientist. I just want to get that out
No,
there.
no, of course.
I'm a business person, but it's so accessible and available to all of us now that we can all read such good quality, accurate information and be able to use it and apply it effectively. So we know that the brain consists of 86 billion neurons. Now, I know for sure it won't be exact, and it'll be
Yeah.
different. It might be 86 billion and one. or 85 billion and however many 900. But there are an awful lot of neurons in the brain. The neurons the brain cells, so they are the active sources within the brain. But the most interesting part about the brain is not really the brain physiology and structure itself that's interesting. Well, it is interesting, but it's the network. It's how the different facets of the brain communicate with each other. And I think I wrote about this in the book as well. It wasn't original from myself. I'd read it from another source about how if you consider the Amazon rainforest to consist of, say, around 86 billion trees, deforestation notwithstanding, and estimate that each of those trees in the Amazon rainforest has around 10,000 trees, 10,000 leaves, then that's akin to what's happening in our brain, because every neuron in the brain has on average 10,000 possible connections. So if you think about connections as being like the way of transporting information around the brain and the central nervous system, therefore into all aspects of your body to make it function and operate, our brain is akin to all the leaves in the Amazon rainforest. I like using metaphor because I think it helps people to understand the wonder and the enormity of, and the complexity as well, of this thing we've got inside our heads. And then maybe by extension, the importance to look after it.
Yeah, absolutely.
To really embrace all of those leaves. And if some of the leaves are falling, then let those leaves that are falling be habits that you want to suppress, and really nurture the ones that you want to keep going. So the brain, I think, whilst it's accessible and we're learning more and more about it all the time, I certainly don't think in my lifetime, maybe not even my children's lifetime, will really understand the brain in its entirety and its possibility and what it can do to us, because which is also entirely unique in every human being. And that was also part of my interest in studying the brain and applying the brain in the coaching and training scenario, because I was born with quite a serious hole in my heart. I mean, and in those days, certainly in the 1960s, when I was born, it was deemed to be quite a serious thing. But the result of it was the fact that I always felt very different. I was treated different at school. I was on half-day schooling, wasn't able to participate in some of the games, etc., etc. And it's really interesting how that has informed me right from the way of being a youngster about our uniqueness in life. I've always felt quite different. And I think that understanding about the brain and the fact that we are all different, I think is also a very powerful thing, a very powerful message to be able to offer our clients, where they may feel excluded or isolated, for instance, in certain social situations or at work. But actually, if they can start to learn their own strengths and their own uniqueness and really ground themselves in the fact that we've all got a unique brain. So let's now flip it all around from being stuck to understanding what our gifts are.
Yeah.
Using that type of language can be very helpful. So all of those 86 billion neurons and the 10,000 on average connections that are running around our central nervous system, they're unique to us. And I think that's one of the most powerful messages about the brain. The other
Yeah.
thing that on a very basic structural level that we all band around these terms, but the more modern, if you like, part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. And it's very interesting. I think in work, certainly in the corporate environment where I started my working life, we tend to really honor and really want to work with that prefrontal cortex. It's all about conscious thinking. It's all about rationale, accuracy, precision, maybe sort of mathematical, scientific, and analytical thinking. Whereas 80% of our neurons reside more in the older part of the brain. Some texts call it the ancient part of the brain, but where more of the emotional, empathetic systems reside there.
Yeah.
In the world we live in now, how much do we honor our intuition and our sort of more subconscious systems and our the more ancient emotional parts, if you like, of the brain? And I find that really fascinating. Culturally, the East, I've been very generalized here, but people in the East, they honor the way that their whole body and their brain, that whole connection element, perhaps more so, being very generalized, than we do here in the West. And I think that sometimes some of our clients in the coaching sense get stuck because they are in patterns of behavior where they're not accessing congruently, if you
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
those emotional parts of their brain, or they're in an environment that's toxic and doesn't want them to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll definitely talk more about that in a moment.
Yeah,
I just want to pick up on, what you were saying about possibly even in, your children's lifetime, we
yeah.
won't get to fully understand it. And is it true then that you read these stats that say that we're only actually using a small percentage of what's possible?
Yeah. The reason for the giggle is that I remember, I think it was in George Bush's time when he declared, it might have been it was the sort of thousands to the tens, in the year 2000, the decade of the brain. And at that stage, I think some neuroscientists was saying that we only know about 3% of what there is to know about the brain. And I thought, how do they know that there's
Mm, mm,
97% still to establish? I don't know if we can put a number on it, but the answer to your question is yes, there
mm,
has to be
mm.
some truth within that,
Yeah,
not least because of the billions of people in the world and their unique experiences around that. I think from a tangible perspective and scientific perspective, empirical perspective, so by that I mean from, say, a clinical point of view, we will establish more and more in terms of treating conditions, will be absolutely wonderful. I think, that the problem of our time, or going forward in our children's time, might be more around Alzheimer's and degenerative dementia type of diseases because of longevity of living.
mm,
But how much will we ever be able to discover the nature that is human?
yeah.
That more of that behavioral, purpose-based living.
Mm. Well, it's
So
that
I believe
nature
it's,
versus nurture as well, isn't it? I've
yeah,
always been absolutely fascinated by that. I mean, that really is fascinating.
yeah, it
It's
is.
another whole
Yeah.
topic, I guess. Just tell me a little bit. I'm just really interested about the actual development of the brain. So,
Yes.
when I was pregnant with my first child, I always remember I went to a talk, a kind of, a pregnancy talk, antenatal talk, and this lovely wise old guy, who was very into sort of natural health, was telling us, you need fish for your baby's brain to develop, you need fish. And the next day it was like, oh, cure pregnant women at the fish counter. I mean, is that actually true? Do we need fish to refer to a certain point in pregnancy? Or is that a little bit
Well,
too simplistic?
Well, simplistic or not, it kind of does make sense that our babies, or our embryos, fetuses, whatever stage they're at, will be nourished and nurtured through the
The building
placenta. And
blocks,
so
yeah.
what we imbibe. My dad actually was an obstetrician gynecologist, and when I think back, I remember him telling his ladies who were quite stressed. And I remember him telling us, my sister and myself, when they were stressed, that, oh, you don't need to give up your drinking. It's fine. I don't want you to be
God.
stressed. And I think now, goodness me, what's passing that. So it's the brain is really interesting. We those connections I was talking about, they start within the womb before the
Mm,
baby is even born. And from a physical perspective, that thing that's good for us as a born adult, so
yeah,
somebody who's
yeah.
out of the womb, is going to obviously be good for our baby from a sort of crossing the placenta perspective. So, and it's really interesting. I think that most women will adopt that pregnancy principle, that they will start to look after themselves
Yeah.
within that when they're nurturing. And we do have an instinctive sense as women to nurture and grow a healthy baby as well.
Mm,
The brain starts to develop. I think it starts at six. Really starts to
yeah, it's
develop
really early, isn't
that's
it?
really early.
Mm,
At around 6 weeks, we start to start almost this synaptic pruning. So we're
mm,
we're
mm.
we're building these connections and starting to prune them out. So I'm not saying we're developing preferences in the room in the womb, but as we become a young child, we really do develop a personality very early on, and
Mm.
lots of experiments on babies, and looking at the baby, but also the young children as well. Um, they will talk to the health of a brain and how it helps to develop certain types of emotional resilience and personality, etc. So the message very strongly, yeah, I think the fish count is a good one.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
an intuitive one, isn't it? Very much so.
Definitely. And then as we go through, then, you talk about these synaptic, is that the word? The
Yeah.
synaptic kind of connections.
Okay.
What happens as we get older then? Is the development of the brain directly linked to when you talk about sort of childhood development. If you've
Yes.
ever looked at the work of sort of Rudolf Steiner, and
Yes.
things go in the 7-year cycles, is it all linked?
I think it is all linked, and actually, what I really love about neuroscience is the fact that I think it's it's a modality, if you like, to sort of coined a phraseology that is looking to link with other
Mm,
modalities as well.
mm,
So there's the NLPers and the psychologists and the Steiner Institute.
mm,
They're all shaking hands with the neuroscientists, if you like, and we're beginning to find a great way of enhancing each of those modalities by operating with each other as well. And the psychologists talk, I think, about the imprint period, that
mm,
by the time, and this very much marries up with what the neuroscientists say, that by the time we are 16, we are who we are. Now, look, that does not mean that they call it the imprint period, and it doesn't mean that post 16 that we can't change. You know, that would fly in the face of what we know about neuroplasticity that we surfaced a little bit before. We do know that throughout childhood, and with the way that these synaptic networks, so when I say networks, they're called the synapses are the gaps between the neurons and where the messaging runs across between them. They're called synapses. So when I say connections, it's really synaptic
mm,
connections. So it's just a neuroscientific term, the synapse there. And so we do know that we start to prune away those connections as we're really young children, so from the age of perhaps 3 onwards, maybe even a little bit younger, because we're learning to do things in a particular way. We're probably getting rewarded by feedback from our parents or teachers or siblings or friends or other people around us. They're saying, well done, you're walking with that foot forward. So we'll continue to try hard with that foot forward. And so if that was the right foot, then being very simplistic, then maybe those pathways and connections for the left foot moving first forward would start to prune away. But what we do is from that young age, we start to develop principles of doing things in a different way or in our own way. And we learn that through repeated use and through the reward system coming into play. And
mm,
so we prune away those connections that we use less. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't come back. So we would be, if I had an accident, for instance, and lost my right hand, God forbid, well, I hope that never happens. I'm very dominant from a physical perspective, but I could learn physically to use my left hand. It would
mm,
take a lot of effort and relearning. It's the same with parts of the brain as well. If we wanted to do something differently, whether it behaviorally or a physical action, we can do that. We can access the original pathways and be able to sort of reactivate them. But in
mm,
terms of those cycles of childhood, I think there may be some semantic differences between some of the modalities. And we're in broad agreement that as we develop as a child, we turn into that adult. There are imprinted periods of turning into the person that we're going to be,
yeah.
the moral code, that the nature of the person that we're going to be.
Mm. It's interesting that we talk about this, how the brain develops, and
Yes.
what we take in. And of course, you and I, both working as coaches, will know that for ourselves and our clients, there are certain things that we all say about ourselves. Oh, I am this kind of person, or oh, I can't do maths, I can't sing, or oh, all of this sort of tends to be negative thinking. And we know that a lot of this kind of stuff comes from being told that as a child, or hearing that as a child. And at that age where we're not able to evaluate the comment, presumably that's where our brain just kind of soaks it up, files it somewhere,
Yeah.
and that's it. We make that mean forevermore unless we challenge it. I guess they're the pieces that can get us stuck.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, Janey, completely. That's absolutely it. And then something like, it might even be one word or one incident, or it could be repeated observation of our context, our family environment, for instance, where we're observing something happening. So we think that is the norm, and therefore we try to either model it because we learn through modeling, or we just take that to be the norm. But what happens is that something has an effect on us, and therefore we will generalize it and create associations for responding or reacting to something in a particular way, and they can be so almost hardwired, if you like. That's
Mm,
terminology,
Yeah.
hardwired in the way that we show up in the world, that when something later in life comes to challenge it, or we recognize with an increasing awareness that it's not serving us well, then it's very useful to be able to trace back to where did that come from? What is it that's informing this? Because we take the, as you well know, we start to take those experiences as beliefs, and then beliefs become our truth. And when something becomes our truth, it's quite challenging to be able to break them. So from a coaching point of view, when we're able to describe to clients that there is a physiological reason why we anchor these as our truth, that we've got the hard wiring, if you like, we've got that the what I would call super highways of your synaptic network. I call it like a road network. So the ones that we use all the time, that we're acting on all the time, or believing all the time, we have strong neural pathways for those thoughts and the associations within those thoughts. Explain that to a client and they understand the whole concept of neuroplasticity, then it's almost as if they're more energized in some cases, or prepared to take on the potential challenge to break it and find a new truth, find something that may serve them better today without saying goodbye to their past, honoring the fact that they've got me to where I am today. But going forward, it's not serving me, and it's challenging for some people even to be able to be aware of that. But it's useful to be able to trace it back.
I think that when I mean, certainly linking to the work that we do as sobriety coaches, and I'm so thrilled that you came and did the sobriety coach training, because I mean, adding that on, my goodness, it's just so perfect for what you do, isn't it? I know personally that, of course, I don't know as much about the brain as you do, but sometimes even if I just remind a client, you are not your thoughts. Okay, your thoughts are not you. You are not your thoughts. It can be a revelation, because we do feel as though we're all everything. Everything is one, and we don't feel as though there's any escaping from these incessant thoughts. And when we can step back, what a huge difference it makes.
Yeah, 100%. And just going back to what you said at the beginning of that, I'm so grateful to have met you and to have come through your program as well. It's been wonderful. The community that you bring together of sober coaches is fantastic. So it's superb. I'm delighted to be on this, and as a result of working with you through that program. So absolutely, that whole area of you are not your thoughts, and when people it can be so liberating when they recognize that actually they have a choice. But sometimes interesting, because the brain always wants to keep us safe, and that's why it has a negative bias, because if we err on the side of caution, then we're more likely to be able to protect ourselves from any potential risky situations or novel situations. So novel situations may be exciting to some people, but they can be particularly scary to others. We have a different response to different contexts and to different situations. And brain likes predictability, because when we do predictable things, when we're going down those super highways of the roads that are nice and uncongested, that we're used to traveling, our habits, when we do that, it frees up cognitive capacity to be able to think about other stuff. So we're not thinking all the time about, oh, is there a saber-toothed tiger behind me, as in the old days. Likes predictability. So for some people, stress can manifest as something new and different. And that new and different can be thought. Oh my goodness, Janey, my coach, is challenging me to have a different thought, and that can actually manifest as a stress response in people, and they want to shy away from it. But as you say, it can be incredibly liberating when people do understand that actually we aren't our thoughts. We have the ability to choose new thoughts. So so the brain is trying to keep us safe, but at the same time it can limit us, because it's hauling us back into that safety of predictability all the time.
I mean, I remember, back to when I was drinking, that I remember that I couldn't work out why I couldn't stop. Seemingly bright, relatively bright person, like, what the hell? But I knew I was caught in some kind of trap.
but I remember quite clearly conversations that went on in my own head. I remember that it was literally like a voice in my head that was saying, you really shouldn't have another glass. You've had 3, but so don't have another glass. Okay, well, do you know what? You may as well finish the bottle. I mean, it was literally a conversation going on in my head that I didn't feel I was in control of. Very bizarre. I mean, I now look back and I absolutely can see it now. I can see the addictive voice that some people actually believe they have an addictive voice. But if someone were able to help me at that point by just enabling me to recognize, okay, take a pause, step back now and just observe all of this, it would have helped tremendously.
Wouldn't it just? Absolutely. And I see
You've been there. You've been there. Yeah.
And if I may, I've been there with the blooming knowledge about the prefrontal cortex shutting down. I still had those voices.
But that's the thing about alcohol, you see, isn't it? It's that demon that catches you, whatever's going on. Yeah.
I think it's also interesting in that you said, you're absolutely right. We're intelligent beings. We like exploring, we like learning, we like understanding and bringing that new understanding into our lives. And it's not just knowledge that changes. We need to feel changes as well.
Exactly.
And it really matters. And many clients, whether it's in sobriety or in any other area as well, they're almost feared of feeling the changes. And I think I mentioned this before, there are so many more. I think it's around 80% of our neurons are in the more ancient, if you like, and this is a massive simplification, the more emotional, intuitive
the emotional brain.
And it almost gives people permission to access their feelings and to understand why they've got this kind of pull going on between this rational reasoning thing that organizations, for instance, are really respecting and wanting them to use more. But actually, this is the bit, the emotional part of the brain is about relationships. It's about connection with self as well as with others and with the world.
But we aren't very emotionally intelligent, are we? Because we're not taught to, as you say, we're not taught to look at that part. What we're taught is that, bad emotions are bad. Get away from them as quickly as possible. In my case, reach for a glass of wine if anything's even vaguely uncomfortable. And, good emotions, feeling happy. Oh, well, that's good. So I'll stick with that one, until I fall over or whatever. But when we stop drinking, of course, we do have to sit with the emotions, and that can come as a hell of a shock. I've had a lot of clients who that's what's holding them back. They know that they've got something coming at them, and they're really terrified to have to face it. Now, you and I both know that actually the reality is you're gonna have to face it anyway, because it will come and bite you on the bum one way or another. But the reality is we do become more resilient, which is good. But at the beginning, when people are they know that it's time to stop drinking or another vice they want to deal with or behavior change they want to make, but a little voice is saying, when you stop numbing out, you're going to have to look at X and Y.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that holds us back. And it's interesting. I think you mentioned Steiner earlier. A friend of mine has just moved down to the South Coast, and her daughter's in a Steiner school. And it's just lovely to hear the stories about the teaching and the camaraderie, the collaborations, the community, the being in touch with their emotions. It should be part of the national curriculum. Being able to sit with our emotions and understand that actually, what is a bad emotion? Well, maybe in my life, my world, it's a learning emotion. It's always giving us a message. Emotions are giving us a signal. They're giving us a message. That they're giving us some information which we can choose to respond to or not. But you're absolutely right, and this is where and I'm not knocking it in any way. The whole positive psychology movement, it is absolutely wonderful. But it's just not realistic to live in the world of positive all the time.
What you mean? So if we try to just simply gloss over everything by putting an affirmation on top, sort of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, affirmations are absolutely wonderful. They really are helpful, and I even use them as part of, you know, helping people to reprogram themselves. But on their own, they're just words on a post-it note. You know, it's really interesting. I think that what you've said before is what really matters, which is around being able to sit with our emotions and put in the pause.
Yeah.
And if we can almost like relabel them as messages, then that can be helpful. You know, and it's also that language of, you know, I am a bad girl, or I am a party girl, rather than, you know, I feel something.
Yes,
you know,
exactly. Rather than I'm guilty. No, I feel guilty at this moment. It's different, isn't it? I am angry. I'm an angry person. No, I'm not an angry person. I just sometimes feel angry. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
really okay to feel angry. And in fact, if you never felt angry, I would say that would be something we need to look at. Yeah, absolutely.
So for anyone who's listening to this, I mean, obviously they can get your book. What would be the first step then for someone who knows they're stuck? I mean, I was stuck, absolutely 100% stuck. What can they do if they know they're stuck?
Well, I have to say that I would always advocate asking for help. I mean, of course, I'm going to say that I'm a coach, but it doesn't have to be a coach. And actually, it can be, please take this the right way, it can be a wall. Talk it out. I really think the spoken
or go and hug a
word
tree and tell a tree.
Absolutely. You know, the amount of time that people must have thought that there was this mad woman living in West London, Ealing, you know, talking to my Labradors, you know, and it's absolutely fine, because I think that when we create that space between what's going on in our head and using the motor control of writing something down, or using different senses and different actions of speaking the words out loud, then that is also bringing in a degree of pause and a degree of reflection. So it's all about heightening awareness. And actually, the first thing I do, I'm going to just retract, is say, congratulations. If you recognize you are stuck, and then really congratulations.
Yeah, exactly, because that's step one, isn't it?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Big fat pat on the back to do that. And then it's about, what course of action are you going to take? You know, are you going to start with the wall? Are you going to start with the walk? For me, with the alcohol, I mean, when we're all different, I decided to just read. I'm a voracious reader, but I love that. I'm a researcher. I really enjoy that. So I started looking at all sorts of different sources. I wish your podcast had been around at that stage. You know, 5 years ago, there was a bit of a dearth around that. So maybe reading is your thing, you know, in whatever area it might be. But I think that there's absolutely no substitute for seeking help, and that can be a friend. It can be a friend over a coffee. It can be a walk. It doesn't have to necessarily be a professional coach. Really interesting is, often when we don't articulate our sickness or our problems, challenges, if you like, with our friend, it can feel really isolating. We feel
as though we're the only ones. That was I genuinely thought that there was nobody else. I'd never come across anyone. Well, of course I hadn't, because nobody talks about it. I'd come across people who admitted that they had, one or two people admitted they'd been in rehab or something. Well, that didn't resonate with me. But I'd never met anyone who was, you know, functioning perfectly well, seemingly perfectly okay, happy, healthy, all the rest of it, but waking up at 3 a.m. absolutely hating themselves. And now, no, there are millions of people, but nobody talks about it. It's only when you talk about it that you realize that other people feeling the same. So you're absolutely right. When you keep it within, it's not going to get a chance to get unraveled.
No, it isn't. And that feeling of being on your own can lead to a spiral of loneliness. And loneliness is an epidemic at the moment. And it really, because when you feel isolated in any way, it's a dreadful feeling. It really is, to feel on your own about something. So that action of talking it out, even if it's to the wall or to the tree, your brain gets used to your voice articulating, and it can actually be a really good first step to start to feel confident to be able to open up to someone else about it. And then all of a sudden you discover, you're not alone. And it's not just in the drinking area. It's so interesting, isn't it, Janey? We tend to carry so much shame and guilt and almost, these are strong words, loathing,
Yeah,
because we
absolutely.
feel challenged by something. And then we discover that actually there's a whole world out there and we could be helping each other.
Exactly.
The human condition is, we do, from a brain perspective, back to the neuroscience, we evolved to collaborate
Yeah,
and
connect.
to live in tribe, to connect. I mean, that's at a very basic level, it's perpetuation of the species. If you lived on your own, there wouldn't be a next generation. But we also have different skills and preferences, so we're better together. And in the ancestral times, if you were isolated or ostracized from the tribe, it was certain death. And we carry that with us. It can, isolation, and it can feel dreadful, and that feeling of being rejected from a group. But actually, when you start talking, sometimes you reckon that you'll see that there are many other members of the group you aspire to be in, or you're genuinely in, who are feeling exactly the same way. And you can end up being a trailblazer for some really great discussions, like you are in the area of this whole area of alcohol.
And I knew we'd completely run out of time, but just one other question, which I know is actually a massive question, and we might have to just do another whole interview.
Let's do it.
Where does the whole depression and anxiety fit into all of this?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very big question. I can recommend absolutely anybody who's interested in this subject. There's a wonderful book written by a neuroscientist called Alex Korb called The Upward Spiral. And, over 400 odd pages, it talks an awful lot about this. So, yes, we can spiral into anxiety. I think it was actually him that said, it's the wondering about uncertainty that causes anxiety. It's the uncertainty can lead us to a position of feeling anxious. But anxiety is actually about something that hasn't yet happened. We're anxious about the future. So from a coaching perspective, we're about all bringing people back to the present and to look at what strategies they can use to work on now. It is a downward spiral, and it's related to all sorts of things. So related to stress. Stress is a killer of our times. Stress, of course, is around, and the stress response is all around adrenaline and around cortisol, sugar. We can help ourselves enormously. I mean, you know this more than myself, by having really good nutrition, good nutrients, hydration, exercise, all of what I call the nature's medicines, all the rest of it. And actually, Janey, it's a tipping point from feeling stuck and feeling okay talking to a wall, a tree, or a friend, and actually going down the route of starting to feel anxious and depressed about something. There's a tipping point, and there's a very fine line. And as coaches, I think we also need to know where our line is too. I have referred people on to psychotherapists who can feel more professionally in that area of anxiety. We help ourselves enormously with depression, anxiety, other psychological conditions, other behavioral conditions, if we do bring into our lives those whole areas of what I call nature's medicines of food, great nutrition, hydration, sleep, exercise, and breath work. If we bring those 5 things in, the message I want to leave for everybody is what is good for the body is good for the brain, but it doesn't guarantee us against disease or illness or some of those declining cognitive situations like depression or anxiety. I don't feel I've really answered the question.
No. It's an interesting,
it's a
little
area.
tiny little insight. It is, and maybe we should do another whole interview, because I do think it's fascinating, and I think it links so much with the work that we're doing, because there is such a link as well between alcohol and anxiety. There really is. And as you say, what's good for the body is good for the brain, and alcohol ain't good for the body, despite what the media would like you to think. So on that note, Gill, thank you so much. Just tell us where we can find out more information about your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I post on LinkedIn every weekday. That's my platform, and Instagram. And my website's a work in progress at the moment. I'd love to be able to direct you there, but I'll do that at the end of the next interview. So maybe that gives me a deadline there.
No worries. Well, we'll put the details of the book and everything in the show notes. Thank you so much. It's just fascinating, and I love the work you're doing. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Gill McKay. The book is Stuck, and I really hope you enjoy it. I'll put the link to the book in the show notes. We mentioned there that Gill is one of our sober coaches. She trained with me last year. We do have another coaching sober coach training program which starts next January. It starts with a couple of days in person, unless you're somewhere else in the world, in which case you can do it remotely. But we do meet in person for the first couple of days at the end of January, 27th, 28th, and then there's some online sessions following on, and then ongoing mentoring and support. That you become part of our family, our dream team of Sober Club accredited coaches. So if that's something that's of interest to you, drop me a message. Appreciate that's not for everyone, but send me a message or an email if that's you. Whatever you're up to, I really hope that you are able to stay sober, if that's the thing for you, if you're still in those early weeks. If you've been doing Sober October, then, well, you know my take on it. Why would you stop? If you've come this far, why would you stop? There are no good reasons. Just carry on. Do 90 days, do 100 days. Take yourself past Christmas. That's a great idea. And then you can really give yourself that best kind of assessment. Okay, how do I feel? What has changed for me? Do I have more energy? Do I have more clarity? Am I feeling better about myself? Am I, wow, wait for it, even starting to like myself maybe? Am I getting any sense of joy in my life? Am I more present for my kids or my family? Just, you can ask yourself all of those questions, but it's difficult to do it if you've only been kind of 4 weeks and you've been gritting your teeth the whole time. But if you're starting to just get that sense of excitement, don't go back to it. Don't get back down that slippery slope of the booze elevator. If you've managed to step off, stay off and just see how that feels. Really happy to support you with that. It's a very big passion of mine, as I'm sure you know from this podcast. Check out the Sober Club if you want more support. And whatever you're doing this sober Halloween weekend, obviously goes without saying, read my blog post. Alcohol is a trick. It's a big trick. It's not a treat. So just because everyone else are having their pumpkin soup and their Halloween stuff, and the kids are off the radar and off the scale with their sugar, doesn't mean you have to crack open anything alcoholic. Keep the ritual, change the ingredients. I'll see you same time next week.
Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by the Sober Club. Please rate and review. And if you want support, accountability and inspiration, and you want to live your best life without the booze, check out thesoberclub.com.